Hi, everyone. It's a beautiful day. We want to talk about Sabbath. A lot of people love to brag about keeping the Sabbath, but can we be real for a minute? Some of us, a lot of people actually, keep the Sabbath like you're keeping old shoes in the closet. Dusty, it's cracked up, but technically, no one wants to wear those. And this is just a misunderstanding of what the Sabbath experience is. And so today I want to talk about Sabbath keepers who don't actually keep the Sabbath. And in a lot of ways, many people turn the Sabbath into a calendar event, not a covenant, right? There are some folk who think if you just shut the business down Friday night and show up in your church clothes suit on Saturday morning, that we good. But Sabbath isn't about pretending to rest while your mind is still hustling. You sing, you praise with your lips, but you are mentally scrolling Netflix to check your next distraction. That just doesn't work. And perhaps you're still stressing about Monday morning, about the bills, the emails. That's not Sabbath. That's just unpaid overtime. Now, Sabbath is supposed to be a gift, not a grind. And it's not just about stopping what you do, it's about remembering who God is, right? And so we have to get the focus aligned, because you might find some Sabbath police, folk like that, always watching and being critical about this, what Sabbath is. And it's interesting that the Bible says the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath, or for humanity. So it's not just watching folk and being worried about, whether someone microwaved some leftovers. Um, it's more than that. It's whether you are actually on fire for God, right? And I've experienced this, that there are folk who get real excited about guarding the edges of the Sabbath, but forget about the center of the Sabbath, who is Jesus. And we know in a lot of ways the clock better than we know God, or the Lord of the Sabbath. And so that's where we have to be cautious, because if you're bragging about keeping the Sabbath and not turning on the game or watching the game, but it's still in your brain, it's in your mind, in the pews, that your mind is on some football or some basketball, well, congratulations, you kept the Sabbath in your hands, but not in your heart. So the reality is, God didn't give you the Sabbath to show off. He gave the Sabbath to us, to his people, to humanity, to slow you down before your ambition kills you. The Sabbath isn't about, again, rules, ticking off your accomplishment. The Sabbath is about relationship. And God literally set aside 24 hours, 24 of 7 days, just to spend time with you. And whenever we fall into just keeping it as a chore, it becomes a challenge. He says to keep it holy, not by being miserable. He said keep it holy by being with him, right? So in another way, the Sabbath is a protest against the system that says your worth is in your work or your career or your calling. But it's God's way of saying, you belong to me. You are my child, not my employee. You are mine. I have loved thee and I'm jealous of you. The Sabbath is really a weekly reminder that you are already saved by grace, that you can't earn Friday sunset to Saturday sunset. You just receive it, receive this gift. And so the exhortation really for us is that we don't fake our rest. Start actually resting in Jesus. And I remember when there were no cell phones and no internet. I mean, life was simpler then, but all these gadgets have their own blessings and advantages. But 24 hours off is really about saving your life. It's recovery. It's a reset where we turn off what they're saying, the gossip, turn off the competition. I mean, the reality is if you can't rest one day, you're not free. I mean, really, we're just slaves hustling around. And no one is saying not to hustle, but some of us need to cancel more of that, more of activities, busyness, and consider leaving potlucks and doing some prayer talks and stop worrying about who's breaking the rules and ask yourself, am I even meeting Jesus on this day? And I believe the world doesn't need more Sabbath keepers, right? I think it needs more Sabbath lovers. Yeah. Sabbath lovers. People who radiate peace because they have been with the Prince of Peace, right? So, if your Sabbath has become cold and boring and dry and heavy, there's no joy in it anymore, right? Then obviously you're doing it wrong, right? This is from creation. And Jesus says his yoke is easy and he says that his burden is light. And so this is huge because Sabbath was made for us. And it shouldn't feel as though you're being crushed. So in other words, stop keeping it like it's your burden and experience this living, live it like it's a party invitation. Because when you really keep Sabbath, when you really keep the Sabbath with God, with Jesus, you won't just rest one day of the week. You'll learn to live rested every single day of your week because the reset. So go keep the Sabbath, not just in your schedule or your calendar, but from the inside out in your soul.